JonBenet Ramsey, they called it a kidnapping before sunrise. A note waited on the staircase, long as a monologue, written on paper torn from a pad inside the house. It asked for a sum that felt like an inside joke so precise it matched a number whispered in offices, not alleys. The house filled, as houses do in sudden grief, friends, a pastor, soft voices, and the morning kept moving even as time should have stopped. Police arrived to a scene already lived in. Hands had touched doorknobs, feet had crossed thresholds. A kitchen counter bore the ordinary trace of a late-night snack that the night's story did not include. Downstairs, a storeroom with a paint-spattered workbench waited behind a door that had been opened and closed and somehow not seen. Hours later, the father went where the search had not landed and carried her upward, wrapped and beloved, every necessary piece of evidence taking on the weight of goodbye. Nothing about the next days behaved like certainty. The ransom note read like theater phrases that sounded borrowed, a swagger that felt performed, and experts disagreed about the hand that wrote it. Not exonerated, not confirmed, conclusions hovered in the conditional. The window people pointed to as entry had cobwebs that kept their geometry. Snow outside offered no footprints to narrate. The alarm had slept through the night. The story split and then split again. Some saw an intruder who threaded a needle of chance, knew what to ask, knew where to go, knew how to leave nothing that could be held in a pair of tweezers. Others saw a domestic tragedy hidden beneath the costume of a kidnapping, home objects repurposed into props, a broken paintbrush, a heavy flashlight, a cord that should have stayed a cord. The autopsy's timeline and the kitchen's small clues seemed to disagree with the house's original script. Even the bowl of fruit so common it should have meant nothing sat there like a quiet contradiction. Procedure faltered. Rooms weren't sealed. Interviews moved at the pace of public relations. Evidence went missing, was moved, was handled with the care of love rather than the caution of law. Years later, when people spoke of the earliest hours, they didn't use the language of conspiracy so much as choreography. Not one big lie, but a sequence of little permissions. Authorities tried to draw a clean line through the mess. A decade on, trace DNA on her clothing tiny, ambiguous was used to clear the family in public, even as some forensic voices warned that contamination is a patient traveler, and manufacturing lines leave fingerprints of their own. A grand jury met in secret and voted one way. A prosecutor declined and filed another way. The paperwork slept under seal until it woke with dust on it. The case became a hall of mirrors, documents you could cite that other documents later blunted, analyses that looked like answers until a new lab, a new lawyer, a new program aired on television and shook them loose again. People watched the family, because people always do. A mother whose poise was read as performance by some and as armor by others. A father holding grief like a ledger he had to keep balanced to stand upright. A child brother, protected from the spotlights adults could not seem to turn off. Every gesture became evidence for someone, every silence, too. Through it all, the city's police and federal voices appeared, receded, reappeared. Experts explained the note, then the injuries, then the fibers, then the timing, then the psychology, each clarity followed by its equal and opposite clarity. The case turned into a country where no one could hold office for long. And the longer it went unresolved, the more the myth hardened, that this was less an investigation than a management of possibility. A narrative curated in real time by grief, by influence, by fear of the wrong answer delivered too soon. It is safer now to speak in questions. Who writes a 2.5-page ransom note inside a house they're robbing of a child? Who asks for a number so specific that it echoes a private paycheck? Who carries a body up the stairs, away from the room that should have been mapped and guarded, if not a parent who cannot accept that the floor between them and the world has given way? Who lets a crowd inside a crime scene and then expects the carpet to tell its story cleanly? These are not accusations. They are the shape of the hole where certainty should be. Facts remain, and they are stubborn, no forced entry verified, a security system asleep, early errors that can't be undone, a grand jury that voted for charges the public did not see for years. Trace DNA that exonerated in headlines, but not in laboratories that prefer sober footnotes. A ransom note that experts could not pin down and yet could not dismiss, a child lost, and a case that lives on like a question you cannot stop asking because the asking is the only way to remember. Maybe this was a perfect storm of human failure shock, holiday timing, small city inexperience, a family too wealthy to be handled like any other family. A media machine that turned a basement into a stage and never struck the set. Maybe it was something colder, a crime staged with care, then shielded by competence of a different kind, legal, public, procedural. The truth lies somewhere between those maybes, behind doors that were not all locked from the outside. If there is a way forward, it is not through a televised revelation or a stranger's confession offered for attention and then withdrawn. It is through the humility to revisit what was convenient to accept and the courage to test what was convenient to announce. It is through transparency about the evidence that was weighed, the evidence that was lost, and the thresholds that kept decisions from crossing into court. A child's life should not be a puzzle box, solved only by those with the right key. But that is what this became, a murder converted into an ongoing management of doubt. She deserved better police work, better restraint, better truth. Some cases freeze because winter is what they are. This one was frozen on purpose, or at least allowed to stay that way, until the day someone chooses to light the basement. The rest of us will be left upstairs, telling each other the same careful stories, waiting for a door that has always been within reach to finally open.